Running morning radio talk show.
AM Ocala Live from 7 a.m. till noon weekdays.
Right here on WOCA The Source.
Visit the WOCA website at www.woca.com. Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA. Ocala.
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Thursday. It's an overcast Thursday, and we are keeping an eye on the weather. Fortunately, it looks like we may have dodged a bullet with this Hermine, but don't be too complacent because the weatherman says the right edge of the storm, which is where we will be when it gets here later on today, the right edge is where tornadoes could spawn. So just keep praying and keep your eye out and your ears open for the things that indicate that something might be going on. All right, if you have one of those cameras, I have one of these cameras, Robin, where there's a little knob on the top. And it's got a big green spot, which means automatic, like you don't have to think as a photographer. You just push the button and it'll do all the work for you. And then there are other settings. And one of the settings is a little picture of a guy running. And I was told that you're supposed to put it there. You're supposed to turn the dial to that if you're taking pictures of sports, like like a race car or or
skydivers or stuff like
that. Yes. And of course, that's the amateur way of doing things. There are professional sports photographers out there, and my goodness, I have one to tell you about. I have a book of them to tell you about. I should say, there's a book that I'm holding that is heavy enough to stop the winds of a hurricane from blowing something away. The book is called Who Shot Sports, and we have on the phone Gail Buckland. She's a writer, an historian, a researcher, and it says here she has written or been a collaborator on 14 books of photographic history. When you read the title Who Shot Sports, if you think this is all filled with NFL pictures, you're wrong. It's amazing. Everything in the world that is sports-like. Gail Buckland. Good morning, Gail.
Good morning. I'm wishing you well in Florida. I hope you do miss the storm, and I would make even heavier books if I thought they could defer a hurricane.
Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Buckland, New York.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you for being on the air with us. So where do all these pictures come from? I mean, some of them are older than all of us.
Much older. The earliest photograph in the book is 1843, and cameras didn't have little guidelines on the top how to take the picture. It was primitive. That first photograph was taken actually on a piece of writing paper that had been sensitized with chemicals.
Really?
The exposure was 1 or 2 minutes, and there was nothing like a shutter. There was a lens cap. You took the lens cap off. You counted. You looked at how much light was in the sky, and then you put the lens cap on. Needless to say, no movement. But the earliest photograph has a lot of attitude. And what is exciting is that from the very beginning, even when you couldn't capture motion, there was something about sports that has energy. There's an energy that an athlete conveys with their body. And the story of sports photography is really very much tied up with technological history of the camera, because sports photographers had to stop the action.
Yes.
Inherent to sports is stopping the body in motion.
Right.
And it's an exciting history, but it has not been written before because we love the athletes. We like seeing the winning touchdown. We get caught up in a moment that defines a game, but it isn't necessarily the moment of the best photograph. So for 5 years, I interviewed almost every living photographer who I considered really has made a contribution in giving sports its dynamic, its universal image, and asked them not just what pictures you took that were published, but what are the pictures that weren't published? What are the pictures you love, and why? And they often would say, well, the light wasn't right at the finish line, so I ran around behind, and it was amazing. There were no other photographers there, and the light was so beautiful, and I didn't get the man who won the gold medal. I got the bronze medal winner because in that moment, that expression was so incredible. She couldn't want anything more. She was so happy.
Oh, wow.
So
I love the excitement in your voice. Do you know, I'm flipping through the book as you talk, and something came to mind, and I'm going to say something rather, there's a rule with broadcasters who are doing interviews. We're supposed to ask questions, not make statements. but if you'll forgive my breaking that rule real quickly, I want to make a statement because I want to hear your response to that statement. My statement is this, that I'm observing something that you probably have already known, that sports is probably what it is today because of photography. I wonder how many of us are enamored by sports because of those very photographs.
It's an excellent statement, and I'll respond to it in this way. The still photographs that we used to see in the newspaper, on the in Sports Illustrated, in the magazines, a still photograph locks into human memory in a very particular way. You might watch the game on a Monday evening, but that photograph that you see the next day often remains with you. And I think that we haven't paid enough attention to how really professionals, people who know what they're doing, who know as much about their craft as the athletes know about theirs, capture these moments that have a universal quality. And sports is universal. It's games are a basic human need, and great photographers are masters of the moment. And if sports is about anything, it's about being in the moment. The athlete is in the moment. The audience, the crowds, the fans are in that moment, and the photographers are in the moment too.
And some of those photographs in the book, they're not just about the sports events themselves, but there are candid shots in there too, and those are some of my favorites.
Yeah.
The ones of the fans? Yeah. Well, it was a challenge how to organize the book. After I did, years of research, looked at thousands and thousands of photographs, had all my notes, then you have to organize a book. A book has to have, integrity, and all my books, I've done 14, I think, show all the work that went into it. This isn't just a collection of pictures with a short introduction.
No, this is amazing. This is an amazing book.
Each picture I write about, I think about, I try to help people look at it. But so to answer your question, I organized the book, but somehow I asked myself, well, how do photographers think about their craft? What do they do? How do they work? And I realized they often turn around and show pictures of the fans. There wouldn't be any superstars without the fans.
Right.
I mean, you need pictures of the fans. How do you show the fans, the audience, what they couldn't see with their natural eye, with their own eyes? Well, a vantage point. How do you get the camera up on the rafters, below the fence in a horse race? I mean, where do you position the camera to make it the most exciting? I tell the story the first time, a camera was put on the backboard of a basketball net or in a hockey net right behind. I tell this story the first time Heinz Klutmeyer, after working for 1 year, figured out how to put a camera at the bottom of an Olympic swimming pool so you could see Olympic swimmers from below. It's accepted now, but it didn't just happen.
Didn't always happen, yeah. Gail, we have to take a little break. Gail Buckland is our guest. You're going to love this book. It's called Who Shot Sports? A Photographic History, 1843 to the present.
Amazing.
These photographs are amazing. Robin was pointing out how she likes the candid shots, the ones that don't look posed, and I do too. It's just amazing. And some of the clarity in the old photos is, oh my gosh, you got to check this one out. So let's take a little break. Gail, don't go away, please. We'll be back after the break. And again, the book is called Who Shot Sports? A Photographic History, 1843 to the present. We'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. On this Thursday, lots of clouds, gusty breezes, and a shower and heavy thunderstorm or two. They can bring torrential downpours, damaging wind gusts, even an isolated tornado. The high in the mid to upper 80s. Then rather cloudy and breezy Thursday night with some rain and a thunderstorm, low 74 to 78. Friday, mostly cloudy and windy with still a little rain at times and a thunderstorm, the high in the 80s. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
The very best in quality is Captain T's upholstery.
Hey, this is Dan. Let me ask you a few questions. Does your boat look better with the cover on? Has your car's interior seen its better days? Stop using a towel to cover up those rips in the golf cart. Isn't it about time you had it restored to better than new with a custom upholstery from Captain T? Captain T's upholstery has been right here in Ocala for nearly 20 years, so they know how to make your ride one of a kind. Whether you want to take that classic ride back to a factory look or put your favorite sports team front and center, Captain T's upholstery is who to call. 352-369-1810. That's 352-369-1810. Or stop by their location, 5030 South Pine Avenue in Ocala, just past the drive-in. And of course, don't forget to visit them on the web, CaptainTUpholstery.com.
The very best in quality is Captain T's upholstery.
You've got a garden, and we've got a show for you called You've Got a Garden with your host, Master Gardener Carol Ann Baldwin. Carol Ann answers your questions about your flowers, your veggies, your grass, your trees, even questions about your bugs. And she's only on WOCA, so don't miss Carol Ann Baldwin and You've Got a Garden each Tuesday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on WOCA The Source.
All right, 14 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in, and we're trying to take your attention off of the weather. I don't know that the weather's a whole lot to worry about, but don't be complacent. You don't need me to tell you that. What you do need to pay attention to, this is an awesome book, Who Shot Sports? During the break, I was speaking to Gail Buckland about the book, and she pointed out the last picture is Jimmy Johnson. Everybody,
yes.
We have a big NASCAR following here. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you realize that, Gail. But the other thing here is horses. This is considered horse country, and I was asking you, and if you don't mind repeating what you said off the air, what was the story behind still pictures becoming motion pictures, and what was the connection with the horse industry or horse profession?
Well, it's a great story. It involves the former governor of California, Leland Stanford, the Stanford University named after him, and a photographer named Edward Muybridge. Stanford made a wager with a friend. Stanford believed that at some point a galloping horse had all four legs off the ground, and the other person did not. But they didn't know how to solve that wager. And Stanford hired the photographer Edward Muybridge to prove that at some stage a horse's feet were all four were off the ground. It had never been done. In 1872, Muybridge figured out a way of capturing a horse in motion. He had to develop a shutter. Before that, you would take a lens cap off, count a few seconds, put it back on. Obviously, you're not going to stop a horse, counting the seconds. So Muybridge took a sequence of photographs, and that sequence he could put into a device, an optical device called a I'm going to forget how to say it, a spinning device that when you spun all the pictures, it looked like movements. So many people will call Muybridge the father of motion pictures because he took sequential pictures that when you spin them around look like movement.
Like a, what do you call that thing? A Nickelodeon, right? Is that what they call it? Is that the thing that flips the pictures?
A little like that, slightly different. I'm sure your readers are going to call in because I'm having a senior moment.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. I do have a computer here. I guess I could Google it, but I think we understand what you're saying, though. So,
you have sports from depictions from around the world. You have some in Ethiopia.
I felt very strongly that one of the things that is almost universal around the world is sports. And I felt very strongly that the book should not just be American football, basketball, and baseball, although there's plenty of those photographs in the book. I have young women in Mogadishu who practice basketball every day under armed guards because their lives are threatened.
Really?
Or they're threatened because basketball is seen as the devil from the United States. One of the and women are not supposed to play sports in very extreme cultures. I have photographs of young men in South Sudan who do play basketball and play it very well, and the only escape from their country is if they could possibly get a scholarship, to a high school or a college to play basketball because they really don't want to be given a gun and sent out into the jungles, to fight. The story of sports is a fascinating one because it tells us a lot about who we are as human beings. We all have bodies, but we can't all achieve what athletes, but we can celebrate in their achievement. And I think that, there is a real need for that kind of spectacle, that kind of release, whether we're playing sports or watching sports. You were talking about cameras at the beginning. Well, the biggest market now for good cameras are for parents who aren't happy with their, cell phones. They want to get better pictures of their kids playing sports.
Right, exactly.
And even a master like Walter Yost, who probably had more covers for Sports Illustrated, has a close relationship with Michael Jordan. He told me, Gail, I don't want to photograph millionaires and billionaires all the time.
Right.
I got into this because I love sports. I sometimes see more joy on the amateur playing field than in the professional.
Oh gosh, yes.
Teams.
Do you know what occurs to me as I'm looking again through the book is that some of the photographers must have been athletic also. For example, there's a photograph of a guy flying in one of those flying suits. He jumped off of a mountain or something, and whoever took the picture must have been there with him.
Mm-hmm.
He was hanging out of a helicopter. That's extreme sports, which I've also included. The photographer Jörg Mieter does a lot of work for Red Bull. But what I like about the extreme sports photographers, and let me make a note here, that sports photography tends to be a boys' club. And I hate to say it, but the men admit when they saw a woman with a camera coming to the finish line or on the sidelines, they often thought it was very funny to block her, and they made a wall so she couldn't get in.
Oh no!
But I wish there were more women sports photographers, but they've had a hard battle, just like getting into the locker rooms. But where they really shine is in extreme sports, because there are there's nobody there in the middle of nowhere to block their view, and they're courageous and they're good. But that photograph shows what I like about extreme sports photographers is they say no Photoshop, no manipulation. These athletes have to keep it real. They're really jumping out that plane. They are really skiing down a rock face that has never been skied before. They're not faking it. We're not going to fake it. So their integrity is amazing. And they often say, we have 1 split second to get the shot. You know, it might be a month preparing the shot.
Right.
And 1 split second to get it.
You also have pictures from the 1936 Olympics where, you know, in Germany with the Hitler regime.
Yes, I have a very interesting. The Library of Congress has the album that Leni Riefenstahl, who made the classic film Olympia, gave to Adolf Hitler. I asked the curator there, I said, wow, how come you have Hitler's personal album with all the 1936 photographs of the Berlin Olympics? She said, simply, Gail, we won the war. When the American troops went into Hitler's home and library, we removed the things we wanted to remove, and they're now part of our cultural heritage. They're at the Library of Congress. You know, they're online if anybody wants to see them. But I did not want to celebrate Leni Riefenstahl because even though later on she denied being a Nazi, she absolutely was. But the photographs are amazing, and part of that amazement is she was using really fine German cameras, the Leica, and many other types of cameras, because Germany was great. You know, they were great lens makers, great camera makers in those days.
This is a fabulous book, and you are a fabulous guest. My gosh! And if I'm seeming uncharacteristically quiet, it's because I'm amazed by this book. I'm flipping through it as I'm listening to Gail talk. I have a ringside seat, so to speak. The book that I'm looking at is the book I would recommend. You don't have to love sports, by the way. This is really a photography book, but if you love photography and sports, it's a double win for you. The book is called Who Shot Sports? A Photographic History, 1843 to the Present, by Gail Buckland.
The narratives.
Oh yeah, the narratives are everything. I mean, it's a real great work of collaborative between visual and reading, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I hope so.
Gail, do you have a website for the book?
I do. It's gailbuckland.com, or you could go to Alfred A. Knopf. There's a description of the book on my publisher's website, and it's available in bookstores and online, and I think it's great value for the money, and it's a great present for somebody who loves sports, who loves photography, who loves learning something new, because it's all new information. Even people who say they thought they knew a lot about the subject are finding things that they just didn't know because nobody's written about them, and certainly nobody has found these photographs before.
And this really is different from your project, Who Shot Rock and Roll.
Yeah, I want to see that one too. I want to see that.
Yeah, that's a great one. And both subjects, both rock and roll photographers and sports photographers, have been left out of the history of photography, have not been normally exhibited in art museums, and I say, stop these false hierarchies. If it's a great photograph, it's a great photograph. Let's embrace it.
Yeah.
And sports photographs are some of the greatest. There's no question about it.
I'm really loving this. Gail, thank you for being on the air. I went to your website, gailbuckland.com, and I can see right there how easy it is to just order the book from the website. There's a little biography on you. I only see half your face, though. So
it's artsy. It's so artsy.
How's the weather in Brooklyn today, by the way?
It's raining today.
It's raining today.
It's raining, but it's cooled down a little bit, so that's good.
Well, I think we're sending Hermine up your way. After we're done with Hermine, it's going to come your way.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I hope it doesn't come your way. I really am praying for you, because you don't need a hurricane to hit you.
No, absolutely not. Real quick question on the rock and roll one. Did what was her name? Linda McCartney. Mm-hmm. Did she? Yes. I remember when I was younger, she was always with photography, right? She always did pictures, not just
Linda McCartney. No, she was a great photographer, and she's in my book. And I actually it was tricky to get permission. I needed permission from Sir Paul McCartney to publish her pictures, but they loved what I wrote about her because I wrote about her love of photography. Her first gig was she ended up on a boat with the Rolling Stones.
Oh, wow.
And she photographed them. And she had a great relationship with Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, I'd love to see that book, too.
It's a terrific book. And again, it's from the point of view of the photographers.
I'm sorry. It sounds like I'm being rude. I'm not intending to do that, but we have to run because of the clock. Gail Buckland, thank you so much. Good luck with everything, and please come back anytime you want.
Thank you so much for this terrific interview. Okay,
we'll be right
bye-bye.
back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Donald Trump telling veterans in Cincinnati